SoundPEATS' seemingly relentless assault on the STEM-based in-ear market shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. Over the last calendar year, we've had the dual driver H2, the ultra low latency Airfree Pro, the 6 mic LDAC 43 dB ANC Capsule 3 Pro, and the first release within the Life range, the original SoundPEATS Life, a bass monster which we reviewed on this channel not that long ago. Today we're going to be taking a look at the newest addition to the portfolio, the Life Classic. The Life Classic seemed to be pitched at a very different target market to some of those previous products which you saw there, in particular on price. We've got a discount code in the comments section below. If you're a UK buyer, you can get a further 10% off the already discounted price. It takes the price down to just £19.03 or €21.70. So if you're a very price conscious buyer, this puts them at a massive advantage over some of their other recent releases. So in the review, we'll be taking a look and seeing how they compare with some of the other products in that price sensitive market, like my previous favourite for 2022, the QC-YT13. Without further ado, let's get on with the review of the Life Classic. Firstly, apologies, this is such a new release from SoundPEATS. They've managed to get it out of the door quicker than they've managed to finish all their marketing material. As a result, you don't have any vendor blurb at the beginning, so I have a feeling this review is going to be slightly shorter than usual. So let's dive straight into the unboxing. If you've watched any of my SoundPEATS reviews recently, you'll realise there are two flavours of unboxing when it comes to SoundPEATS products. There's the slightly more premium feeling affair that you got with the Airfree Deluxe HS, where you certainly wouldn't mind giving that as a gift. And then there's the less impressive one, which is definitely more substance over style. You can guess which category this one falls into. The back shows a female model, which is interesting given the form factor and the target market that we talked about in the intro. And the other side, as always, displays their three headline features. Here we've got noise reduction for calls, smart touch control, and 22 hours of playtime. Now you'll no doubt notice there's no mention of LDAC or high-res wireless or anything like that, which points to this being a more budget-focused release. Indeed, SoundPEATS have avoided using that wookie chipset which are used on all those LDAC products this time around, favouring the BT8926B from Bluetrum. That's from the same group of chipsets the Moondrop used with their Neko Cake, and it's a bit more limited in terms of its capabilities. You've only got support for the AAC and SBC codecs. Hopefully I managed to divert your attention sufficiently that you haven't noticed how much I'm struggling with taking this out of the box. Once you do manage to get inside, there's no really interesting surprises in there. It's very consistent with SoundPEATS' previous releases. The charge case for the buds, which we'll be taking a look at the merits of a little bit later in the review, is held in with a foam enclosure. And then you've got a small box which contains your USB type A to C charge cable and the spare tips in small and large, with the medium already factory fitted. Both sets of accessories are in white to match the colour of the buds and the case. And the quality of both the tips and the charge cable is pretty bog standard really. It's what you would expect with a set of budget earbuds. The manual is typically useful. It's in 5 different European languages, simplified Chinese and in Japanese. They use text and diagrams to good effect, especially when it details the control scheme. Volume control is a given with SoundPEATS buds. It's always using that single tap of the left and right earbud, but something else which you've got with this model and all of SoundPEATS non-ANC buds is the ability to toggle tracks backward as well as forwards. Holding the left bud for 1.5 seconds toggles your tracks back, and the right bud for 1.5 seconds your tracks forwards. Triple tap left for gaming mode, right for voice assistant, and double tap initiates play and pause and your call functions. The manual also gives you some guidance over what the charge LED on the bottom of the case means in terms of how much battery life you've got left at green, amber and red. And that's pretty much it from the unboxing. As I said, it's quite basic. It's enough really for the average consumer, but it's not quite of the standard that you would expect if you were giving this as a gift, for example. First impressions of the case is that it's very compact, it's very lightweight, and it comes in a shiny, glossy white finish. It's comprised almost exclusively of plastic. As a result, it feels almost hollow and a little bit cheap compared with the hardware in Capsule 3 Pro case. It reminds me more of the Headfi W220T case and others which sport this pebble style shape, flipping open easily when operating with one hand, with the buds nestling back to back in the cockpit with the stem sitting vertical. There's a friction hinge which is a positive, although if you compare it to some of their other recent releases, certainly it doesn't feel as secure. And when you're removing the buds from the cockpit, you get an early indication it's not just for those with small ears, for those with small fingers as well. Pro tip, pinch from the center rather than the edges and you'll be fine. On the bottom you've got a USB Type-C charge socket. There's no wireless charging or quick charge on this model. You've also got a recessed pairing and reset button and an LED which indicates the case battery. It turns red when you've got below 10%, amber between 10 and 50, and above 50 it's green. In terms of portability, the case does excel here. They weigh around 32 grams, one of the lightest cases I've tested. The width is around 6 centimeters. You've got a height of just over 4 centimeters and a depth of just over 2 centimeters. It means when you're out and about for a bike ride or a run, you can pop them in your trouser or short pockets and you're not going to notice them. But the trade-off for portability is often build quality, and the Life Classic are no exception to this unwritten rule. There's some inevitable compromises to the finishing. There's no lip on the lid, and there's an unsightly gap underneath their hinge which does result in a little bit of movement when you're using it. It can unfortunately leave the lid looking like it's a little bit misaligned with the rest of the case. And you just know that that glossy white finish isn't going to stay glossy for long. As soon as it's in your pocket with your keys, it's going to get scratched up pretty bad. The case does have Hall switch mode, which means the moment you flip it open, the buds will start to connect or pair. For me, this is a big benefit. It definitely adds to the usability. As I alluded to in the intro, the Life Classic are aimed at perhaps teenagers, females, and those with narrow ear canals like me. They're really stable, really secure, they fit really snug, and as a result you get excellent passive noise isolation. They also look a lot less unsightly than something like the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 2, which stick out of your ears quite a bit due to that large oval nozzle. The length of the stem, which is just under 30mm, is probably closer to the stubby stemmed Realme Buds Air 3S and Omthing Airfree buds than the awkward One More Comfort Buds series, for example, and their depth is just 21.9mm, so it's one of the slimmest buds I've tested so far. On the outer edges there's no SoundPEATS branding or rose gold accents this time around. The fully glossy white design has a small white LED set into the plastic at the top of the stem, which flashes during pairing and connection but then switches off during use. The touch controls are here at the top as well. They're very responsive and there's minimal accidental touches. What looks like it could be an LED at the bottom is actually an opening for the voice mic. They have to put it somewhere since the battery connectors are in the base of the stem. As you turn the buds onto the inside, you really do notice that slimline profile and you can understand why they fit so snug. There's two more cavities here, one being a pressure release chamber to improve acoustic performance and the other an ambient mic to augment your call quality. There's no metallic finish to the driver surround this time, it's just a dust proof mesh. As with all products constructed in this way, you should double check it occasionally to make sure that it's not filling up with congealed earwax and sweat, which can cause the volume to drop. The round nozzles have a diameter of 5.5mm, so lots of options in terms of third-party tips. But if your budget for earbuds is only 20 quid, you're probably not going to spend an extra 15 on SpinFits. There's nothing earth-shatteringly revolutionary about the design. You could certainly argue they've got a bit of a cheap generic look to them, but they tick all the boxes when it comes to comfort, stability and longevity, and they even fit my 11-year-old daughter's ears. So as I said earlier, for teenagers and females in particular, the Life Classic are a very good choice in this respect. As I mentioned in the intro, the buds use the Bluetooth 5.2 ready chipset, which allows for the AAC and SBC codecs. The first thing to note on the graph is the alignment between the L and R buds, which is always good to see. The Life Classic, similar to the Capsule 3 Pro, have a strong but prominent mid bass, slightly recessed mids, an upper mid range that allows vocals to come through clearly front and center, and a subdued treble extension. Here you've got a comparison between the QC-YT13 in green, the Life Classic in red and the Capsule 3 Pro in blue. And it's immediately obvious that SoundPEATS have tried to replicate their classic house sound of boosted bass lines and roll-off trebles that works so well for them on the Capsule 3 Pro. There are some physical constraints such as the driver, and then some digital constraints such as the codec, which mean that the Life Classic fall a little way short, especially in terms of resolution, and it's a case of more energy over detail, but at this price the audio experience is definitely palatable. The Life Classic are a little weaker in the sub bass and marginally stronger in the mid bass. That said, while the graph shows that they track loosely with the QCY T13 around the lower frequencies, the T13 have a fuller, more rounded texture to bass lines, sounding somewhat warmer than the Life Classic. There's a little bloat in the lower mids, which you'll notice occasionally on bass heavy interludes, such as the Verses to Side by Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj, where it lacks a little of the smoothness and more natural timbre of the Capsule 3 Pro. Vocals, as we said previously, generally sound quite prominent. Both male and female come to the front and centre very clearly. Treble extension is a little disappointing. There's an adequate amount of punch to kick drums, but like the Capsule 3 Pro and Airfree Deluxe HS, the highs roll off quite early. Whilst there's never a danger of sound bordering on fatiguing, it can leave instruments feeling a little blunt and lacking texture, but this is to be expected at this price, and it's a common problem when you're stuck with a single driver and lossy Bluetooth codecs. Whilst it avoids the trap of sibilance and fatigue, the treble extension is a little disappointing. The soundstage is much more constrained than the more open airy QCY T13 and a little less dynamic than the more fluid Capsule 3 Pro. Generally it's an intimate feel with a darker tone, and it plays pretty well with most music styles for general use. The Life Classic generally deliver a decent sound, certainly for the price tag. The balances alignment to their SoundPEATS classic house sound, and it manages the constraints of the hardware and software that vendors face when offering an ultra low budget option to the market.
Okay, it's ReganCipher testing the outdoor call quality on the SoundPEATS Life Classic. I'm outdoors. I'm in a reasonably busy town centre on a weekend, so you've got a mixture of wind, so you can hear a babble that's going on, some different conversations with groups of people walking around the outside, and that's kind of about it. What we're trying to replicate here is exactly the scenario that we're in, which is in a town where you're out and about and you just need to make or take a quick phone call. That is the SoundPEATS Life Classic. So we moved location where it's a little bit busier, there's a lot more people, so this is going to be a different kind of test for the Life Classic. Hopefully we're going to hear the earbuds able to differentiate your voice from the voices which are going on around you effectively, because that is the aim of the game. When you're in a crowded place, you want the voices that are around you to be reduced somewhat and your voice to come through a little bit clearer. It's another test for the SoundPEATS Life Classic. This time we are inside a shopping centre where all of those voices and those ambient sounds are echoing around you because of the four walls, which kind of bounce the sound around a little bit. Again, what we're looking for here is for your voice to come through clearly over and above those mixture of ambient sounds which you've got going on around you. That is the SoundPEATS Life Classic.
The Life Classic aren't officially supported by the SoundPEATS app, but I did manage to get them working, albeit with a slightly reduced service. There's no battery level indicator, and you don't even get access to those god-awful 9 presets which SoundPEATS usually include. However, whilst it didn't work first time around, second time I did manage to get access to the 9-band custom EQ. This is a nice touch, it's very useful, although bear in mind the majority of the control you have is between 20Hz and 2.4 kHz, so sadly you won't be able to eke more out of those trebles. As always, you can disable single touch, although it's not as relevant on this model because they don't tend to be prone to accidental touches. Latency is very good on this model, even with gaming mode off. It's close to lip sync, certainly on videos, although with your first person shooters you'll probably want to toggle that gaming mode on. It's nice to have any app support at this price, but SoundPEATS should be mindful that the Soundcore app and the Realme app, actually with the Buds Air 3S, is much more polished, and you get a lot more customization, including controls with the QCY app, so this is an area which SoundPEATS should probably look to improve in the future. On the subject of the Realme Buds Air 3S, that will be the next product which I'll be reviewing, so stay tuned for that. should be live in the next couple of weeks. So now we move into the comparison section. In terms of the ergonomics, I think this is an area where the Life Classic are in very strong over the competition. Certainly they fit better than the P2i and P2 Mini, which I found could be a little bit problematic at staying in your ears, even regardless of which ear tip you use. The QC-YT13 certainly more stable, but I found them to be a little bit more invasive. As soon as you get 3-4 hours in, you could start to feel them infiltrating your ear canals, and when you take a closer look at the ergonomics, you can see why. They're actually quite similar in terms of the design, but that long plug area around the nozzle is the culprit. This isn't a problem I had with the Life Classic, so I think this is one area in particular where they excel. In terms of build quality, generally I sense that Soundcore products have a more robust shell and a more robust case, but the P2 series are their budget option. I found that perhaps the build quality isn't as strong as some of their other releases, and it's around about the same as the Life Classic. The QC-YT13 on first inspection does seem to have better build quality than the Soundcore and the SoundPEATS products, but I've seen a lot of complaints on the likes of the earbuds subreddit where buyers have mentioned that the battery life has really eroded very quickly, and my experience with QC-Y products has reflected that, with LEDs stopping working and so on. I think at this price you have to accept longevity probably isn't going to be strong on any of those models. In terms of call quality, I think the P2 range are quite similar to the Life Classic in that they're reasonably good at elevating your voice, but considering they've got AIENC, they don't perhaps reduce the ambient sounds around you as well as some of the other products on the market. When you compare it to the likes of the original Life and the Capsule 3 Pro, it really is night and day. So if you need to make important calls, I don't think any of the products which are in that budget category are particularly strong. The T13 perhaps are slightly better at reducing those ambient sounds, but your voice doesn't always come through as clearly. So again, if calls are important to you, I think focus on perhaps some of those more expensive buds on the market. In terms of audio delivery, I think the Life Classic are a little bit smoother than the P2 series, which have got that archetypal Soundcore classic sound, which is very V-shaped and very punchy, but can feel a little bit thin in the mid-range. So really it comes down to your preferred sound signature. Of course, you've always got the option of going into either app and adjusting the EQ settings. So I think it's pretty much a draw in the audio category, but the one which is ahead of them is the QC-YT13. For me, you've got a richer and more textured lower frequency response, and the soundstage definitely wider, and you've got a little bit more air in the higher frequencies, which is sadly lacking in the Life Classic. And we mentioned the Omthing releases right at the beginning in the intro. These might be tempting sometimes because they slash 40 or 50% off the MSRP on Amazon, and we know that Omthing is a sub-brand of One More, but don't let that fool you. The Airfree buds, which are meant to be a clone of the Beats Studio buds, have very poor ergonomics and an underwhelming build quality. For me, all of the products which we talked about here are better pretty much in every way than the Omthing offerings. Both the Omthing Airfree buds, which had a really quite tinny and metallic sound and a very unnatural timbre. Even the Omthing Airfree 2, which still come down to around that price, and they have active noise cancellation. They're slightly problematic as well. So the Life Classic compare quite favourably with all of those products. I don't feel like they're massively better than the Soundcore P2i or P2 Mini or the QC-YT13. They're all kind of much of a muchness and have got different strengths in different areas. Battery life is one area where they do come in quite weak. The Life Classic advertise up to 6 hours single use, taking it through to between 22 and 24 hours with the case. With calls and around 70% volume, I got around 20 hours in total, with 5 hours from each single use. So if battery life is really important to you, certainly I think you'll probably favour the T13, which give you a total of 40 hours with the case, or one of the P2 products from Soundcore, which give you between 30 and 32 hours. But if that's not particularly important to you and around about the 5 hour mark is fine for your usage, then the Life Classic definitely aren't going to let you down. So I hope you enjoyed the review. The Life Classic, definitely a compelling option, in particular for those with small ears, maybe you're teenagers or females, or those of us who have a problem getting silicone tips to stay in our ears. The Life Classic definitely fit the bill there, with good ergonomics, reasonable battery life, decent audio delivery, and for calls, they're okay considering the price. For me, if you've got a few extra pounds, or you can save up a little bit extra, do consider getting the Capsule 3 Pro. You're getting quite a bit for the extra money you need to fork out. I highly recommend watching my review on the Capsule 3 Pro. It outlines the benefits of spending that extra money. But if you don't have that to spend, if you're on a strict budget, then the Life Classic, definitely a good option. They certainly won't let you down. Thanks again for watching. Leave your comments in the comments section below. Again, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel for future updates. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.